right, well, we can speak to...
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Hogan. Well, we can speak to another guest now. We can speak to the famed historian and BBC presenter Simon Schama, who is joining us now. Simon, great to have you with us here on the programme. We've been talking a lot. We've been talking a lot in the past days, weeks and months about how historic this election is. Put it into context for us, just where this sits in the context of America's history.
Well, there's nothing like this, really, except for the very big moments, like the election of 1860 on the brink of the Civil War. This horse race news and info and bulletins and exit polling is, great fun. It's very important to have right now, but this, historically, is an existential moment. This election will decide whether or not the great American experiment in democracy will endure, or whether or not American politics will be captive to an authoritarian vision of ways in which you seize and keep power. We're talking about Kamala Harris, who, whether or not you like particular pieces of her policy proposals, we're talking about somebody who's the kind of politician who is familiar to the majority of American voters. And that's why, astonishingly, she's built a coalition of people who've endorsed and supported her, from Dick and Liz Cheney on the far right to people at the other end of the poll, because the assumption is that, however dull it might seem, it's the kind of lifeblood of democracy. She respects the Constitution. She respects a peaceful transfer of power. She respects the truth. Her opponent, Donald Trump, lies extraordinarily. Every single speech he makes drowns in lies, and he's capable of saying things in his speeches that are just preposterous, but also sinister. Warning, for example, that you may send your children off to school and they'll come back with a different sex, having had operations performed on them at school. A large, significant part of the country thinks that Donald Trump is only interested in...
Yeah, just to jump in there, if you look at the numbers right now, 50% of the country do believe that Donald Trump is the right choice for president. They say that Kamala Harris and her team are the ones to paint this dark picture of Donald Trump as an authoritarian, as a fascist. The question I'm wondering is, they are pointing to very real grievances that they say Donald Trump has actually put his finger on. Things like affordability, things like an immigration system that they say is broken, things like public safety and crime. I mean, what do you think this moment then tells us about the state?
Let me jump into your jumping in. Well, let me jump into your jumping in. That point of view of Donald Trump is preposterous, because Donald Trump has owned up to sabotaging a bipartisan bill which would have fixed immigration. The United States has the highest growth rate of any G7 country. Inflation is running at about 2%, the best job figures since the 1950s. Donald Trump is an utter stranger to the truth. He's also an enemy of the rule of law. He's an enemy of the Constitution. And, 50% of the country I know doesn't seem to care about democracy, doesn't seem to care about the rule of law, doesn't really seem to care that he instigated an insurrection to overthrow a legitimate result of the 2020 election. I don't expect to see Donald Trump concede this election tonight, because he hasn't yet conceded the result of the 2020 election 4 years ago. And a significant part of the country correctly thinks he's going nuts. Talk of Hannibal Lecter and so on, speeches that have no coherence whatsoever. Do you actually want to put somebody in charge of the nuclear codes who seems to be mostly deranged? These are not just my opinions. These are the opinions of most of his own staff in the White House who served with him. So we're on a brink here. We're on an absolute brink between one kind of America and another.
And just on that point, Sir Simon, sorry, there's a bit of a delay there's a delay on the line there. Sorry for interrupting you there. And we're just coming up to a poll closure.
That's
so just a quick answer from you here, if you can. What does it say about America and how it's been over the last few years that you get to a point like this where it is so polarized? There are those differences of opinion.
It's depressing because actually the internet, obviously Elon Musk's love affair with Donald Trump is a case in point. Essentially, the internet is an accomplice of bitter polarization. It's the friend of conspiracy theories. It is a profound threat to the proper working of truth in democracy.
Thank you for those thoughts, for joining us there, Sir Simon Schama, Professor of History at Columbia University. We're just going to get a very